In 2010, in the sweltering heart of Texas, a man named Tommy Jeffery was convicted of murder. But here's the part that will make you pause. Not one single fingerprint of his was found at the scene. No DNA, no eyewitnesses. Just a conviction that made no sense. The trial lasted just 8 days. The jury came back in less than 3 hours. Tommy, a 34-year-old forklift operator with no criminal record, was labeled a monster before the verdict was even read. The victim? Rebecca Cole, 29 years old, elementary school teacher, beloved in her neighborhood. She was found in her small one-story home on May 12, 2010, in what police called a scene of personal rage. And here's where it gets strange. Rebecca and Tommy? They barely knew each other. According to co-workers, they'd spoken maybe twice, once at a community fundraiser and another time when she asked him for help loading some boxes into her car. That's it. So why was the media already running his mugshot before the investigation was even halfway done? Detectives claimed they had a solid lead from day one, a neighbor who swore they saw Tommy's truck parked outside Rebecca's house around 7:45 p.m., the night of the murder. Problem is, Tommy's truck was in a repair shop that night. He even had the invoice showing it didn't get picked up until the next morning, when defense attorneys pointed this out. The prosecution shifted the narrative. Maybe he borrowed a similar truck. Maybe he walked there. Maybe the witness got the time wrong. But in a town like this, with people craving a villain, maybe was good enough. Rebecca's living room looked staged, like someone had read a how to fake a break-in guide on the internet. The front door had been kicked in, but the wood splintered outward, not inward. Jewelry sat untouched on the dresser. Cash in the kitchen drawer was still there. The killer hadn't taken anything. Even more disturbing, there were no defensive wounds on Rebecca, no sign she'd tried to fight back. The coroner's report was brief but chilling. Cause of death, strangulation. Time of death, estimated between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. Toxicology, traces of a powerful sedative in her system, so someone drugged her and then killed her. On the night of the murder, Tommy claimed he was at a local bar, Rusty's Roadhouse, playing pool. 3 people, including the bartender, confirmed seeing him there between 7 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. But here's the kicker. None of those witnesses were called to testify in court. The defense had their names, but the judge ruled them unreliable due to potential bias. The prosecution's version? Tommy left the bar for about 45 minutes, committed the murder, and came back. It didn't matter that the bar was a 20-minute drive each way, or that the timeline didn't fit. What really sealed his fate? A single receipt. Investigators found a crumpled receipt in Rebecca's trash can for a bouquet of flowers purchased 2 days before her death. The handwriting on the note attached looked eerily like Tommy's. Experts never confirmed it was his handwriting, but the prosecution hammered it anyway. Why would a man buy flowers for a woman he barely knew? Tommy said he didn't. His ex-girlfriend even testified she'd gotten similar flowers from him before. He used a local shop that wrote the cards by hand. Still, the jury didn't flinch. Local news loved the story. Quiet man turns killer. They dug up an old high school fight Tommy was in and painted it as proof of violent tendencies. Social media posts from Rebecca's friends began circulating. Theories, rumors, outright lies. Before long, Tommy's name was synonymous with guilt. One headline read, "Small-town teacher murdered, jealous admirer to blame." But jealousy? There was zero proof they were ever romantically involved. By the time the trial started, Tommy wasn't fighting for his innocence. He was drowning in public hatred. The prosecution's closing argument wasn't about evidence. It was about emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't let this man walk free. Think of Rebecca. Think of her family. Think of your own safety. 8 days, no physical evidence, no motive, no credible eyewitness. And still, guilty of first-degree murder, sentenced to life without parole. But here's where it gets weird. 2 months after the conviction, a new piece of evidence surfaced. Security footage from a gas station 2 blocks from Rebecca's house. Timestamp, 8:15 p.m. on the night of the murder. In the grainy video, a tall figure in a dark hoodie walks toward Rebecca's street. The gait, the build, nothing like Tommy. The footage was lost during the original investigation. And then, a year later, another woman in a neighboring county was murdered in exactly the same way. Sedative in the system, no defensive wounds, staged break-in. Tommy was still behind bars. It was July 2011. In Denton County, just 60 miles from where Rebecca Cole was murdered, Angela Ramirez, 32, was found dead in her apartment. The scene: door kicked outward, again. Jewelry untouched, again. Traces of the exact same sedative in her system. Cause of death: strangulation. No defensive wounds. The eerie part? Angela had reported a strange man lingering near her building days before her death. She even described him to police. Tall, narrow shoulders, walked like his knees hurt. That gait matched the hooded figure from the lost gas station footage in Rebecca's case. Tommy's defense team jumped on it. This was proof of another killer. But here's the thing about wrongful convictions in small towns. Once the system locks in a villain, they don't like to unlock that door. When asked if the cases could be connected, Detective Ronald Spear said, "It's an interesting coincidence, but we believe Mr. Jeffrey acted alone in his crime. The Denton case is unrelated." Coincidence? 2 women, same method, same setup, same sedative, within driving distance? If it was coincidence, it was the most statistically unlikely one in Texas history. An independent journalist, Rachel Flynn, started digging. She reconstructed the timeline for Rebecca's murder night using cell tower pings, bar receipts, and witness accounts. Her conclusion? Tommy couldn't have been at the scene at the time of death. At 8:05 p.m., his phone pinged off a tower near Rusty's Roadhouse. That's a 20-minute drive from Rebecca's home. The coroner put time of death between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. Even if he sprinted the moment the clock hit 8:06, he wouldn't have made it in time. When Rachel tried to publish her findings in the Texas Gazette, the editor pulled the story at the last minute. Why? Legal concerns. Here's where things get downright unsettling. While reviewing the lost gas station footage, Rachel spotted something in a reflection on the store's front window. A white van parked across the street. This wasn't just any van. It had a large dent on the rear passenger door and a faded decal that read, "Wilson's Plumbing." Quick search of local business records. Wilson's Plumbing went out of business in 2008. The van should have been scrapped, but an anonymous tip to police 3 days after Rebecca's murder reported a suspicious white van cruising her street the week she died. That tip was filed and never followed up. Rachel found out Angela and Rebecca didn't know each other personally, but both had testified in court cases as witnesses against the same man, Gregory Holt. Holt was a contractor who'd been sued for fraud in 2009. Witnesses claimed he threatened them. One witness even quoted him as saying, "People who talk too much end up quiet." Here's the part that'll make your stomach drop. Gregory Holt fit Angela's tall, narrow shoulders description perfectly. And in 2011, he owned a white van. Tommy was struggling to survive inside. "Prison is for people who did something," he told his sister in a recorded call. "I'm just a ghost they threw in here to make everyone feel safe." He kept a small spiral notebook, a ledger of every detail about the night Rebecca died. Names, times, weather, the smell of the bar, everything. He swore if anyone ever looked at it, they'd see the truth. But then, the ledger went missing from his cell. Prison staff said they had no record of it being confiscated. October 2012, another woman, Melissa Vaughn, found in her home in Collin County. Exact same setup: sedative, strangulation, fake break-in. Only this time there was a partial fingerprint on a glass in the kitchen. It didn't match Tommy. It matched Gregory Holt. Police claimed it was old and unrelated to the murder. Let me repeat that. A man's fingerprint in a murder victim's kitchen, same MO as 2 other murders, was labeled unrelated. Rachel, furious, decided to do what the police wouldn't. She tracked down Holt's old van. It had been sold at auction to a junkyard in 2013. Inside, scraps of carpet with dark stains. She sent them to a private lab. The results came back: human blood, but degraded. Impossible to match to a specific person after all those years. Still, Holt had never been questioned about Rebecca, Angela, or Melissa. Why? Because the police already had Tommy. Case closed. In early 2014, Tommy's sister got a letter with no return address. It said, "Tommy's innocent. The man you're looking for still drives nights. He watches women who live alone. He's closer than you think." The handwriting was shaky. The postmark? From Denton County, Angela's county. When she gave it to police, they dismissed it as a prank. 2 years later, Rachel received an unmarked envelope. Inside, Tommy's missing prison notebook. The pages had new entries. One, dated just weeks earlier, read, "He was here. He stood outside my cell. Same eyes from court. He smiled." Tommy had written that about Gregory Holt, which meant Holt had been inside the prison, visiting someone, walking past Tommy's cell. At this point, the story was no longer about proving Tommy's innocence. It was about stopping a serial killer the justice system refused to acknowledge. It was just past midnight when Rachel heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. She froze. No one visits her this late. Her apartment overlooked an alley. No streetlight, just darkness. When she peeked through the peephole, there was no one there. Only a folded piece of paper wedged into the doorframe. She unfolded it with shaking hands. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like them." No signature. But the handwriting? It matched the letter Tommy's sister had received. She knew she couldn't go to the local police, not after how they'd treated this case. So she drove 3 hours to Austin to meet with Detective Clara Ruiz, a veteran investigator known for taking on cold cases no one wanted. Rachel laid it all out: the gas station footage, the white van, the fingerprint, the ledger, Holt's history. Clara didn't interrupt once. When Rachel finished, Clara just said, "If you're right, we're dealing with a predator who's been hiding in plain sight for years, but we'll need him to make a mistake." They decided to use Holt's own habits against him. He stalked women who lived alone. He lingered near their homes for days before striking. Clara's team found an abandoned house in Denton County and staged it like it was occupied by a single woman. Lights on at night, curtains half drawn, mail left visible in the box. For 2 weeks, nothing. Then, one night, a white van rolled slowly past. On the 3rd night of the van's appearance, an unmarked police SUV tailed it. Holt parked 2 streets away, got out wearing gloves, and began walking toward the house. SWAT moved in. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just looked at Clara and said, "You finally figured it out." In the interrogation room, Holt spilled everything, not out of guilt, but pride. He admitted to killing Rebecca, Angela, and Melissa. He described the sedative he used, how he staged the break-ins, and how he enjoyed watching the news afterward. When asked about Tommy Jeffery, he smirked. Wrong place, wrong time. Lucky for me. The cops were so desperate to pin it on someone, I didn't even have to try. It was a confession caught on video, undeniable. Even with Holt's confession, freeing Tommy wasn't instant. Prosecutors resisted, claiming Holt could be lying to get attention. Rachel went public with the footage. It spread like wildfire. Twitter, Facebook, national news. Public pressure mounted until the district attorney had no choice but to review the case. 3 months later, the conviction was vacated. After 9 years, Tommy stepped out of Gatesville Penitentiary. The sun hit his face like it was something he'd forgotten existed. Rachel was there, filming. His sister clung to him like she was afraid he'd vanish again. When reporters asked what he'd do first, Tommy's voice cracked. "I'm going home, and I'm locking the door behind me." Gregory Holt was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and received life without parole. In court, he stared at Tommy like he was still holding some twisted victory. But this time, no one believed him. Clara Ruiz received a commendation for her work. Rachel's coverage won an investigative journalism award. A year after his release, Tommy mailed Rachel his spiral notebook. On the last page, he'd written, "They wrote me into their story as the monster. You wrote me out. Case closed." Some cases are about the facts, others are about the truth, fighting to be heard. Tommy Jeffery's case was both. And while justice came late, it came loud enough for the whole city of Texas to hear.